Nau mai, haere mai, e te whānau. Welcome to the Flight of the Next podcast. My name's Holly. I'm on Gadigal land in Sydney, as is Danny. Alex is in Te Whanganui Tara, Wellington. We played our penultimate game of the men's season versus Brisbane on Saturday at Suncorp with a disgustingly poor pitch. A 1-0 loss, goal to Florian Berenguer in the 58th minute. XG 1.83 to 0.44, shots 30 to 6, shots on target 9 to 2, touches in opposition box 38 to 12. Shit show. Danny.
Yeah, look, it was impressive. I went to this game. I flew up to Brisbane. I had a lot of friends that come over from Wellington for it. It was sort of the one away game that we sort of planned. Clearly a very, very bad choice. Going into it, definitely wasn't expecting much. Neither team has set the league alight or played particularly great football over the season. And Suncorp Stadium pitch is normally pretty bad. Never mind after they've had a huge amount of rain up there and there was a rugby union match played the night before. So it was the inevitable mud bath as you expected. Didn't seem to stop Brisbane Roar, to be honest. They carried on playing on the pitch and they played around. And yet we, after a few games where we've actually been fairly entertaining going forward, scoring 2 goals a game for the past three games. And I was really expecting it to be quite an open game and possibly quite entertaining, if not top quality. For some reason, we went back to playing tried and trusted technique of sitting back, letting them have non-close chances and trying to hit them on the break, which worked so well for us last season and has worked so badly for us this season. So it seems strange that we did that, whether that was planned or just the players decided on the pitch, or whether Raw forces into that type of playing, I'm not sure. But it certainly didn't work. Raw basically were all over us. It really wasn't good to watch. Most of their shots were from outside the box. They didn't really test us that much. They hit the post once, which was good. Oluwemi made a couple of saves that you'd expect him to make. But eventually it's gonna catch you, and they did. One little touch, and there was a good shot by Berenguer, and they're 1-0 up. And we just didn't create the chances to think we were going to get back on that, really, even against a side which more improved going forward, but still not particularly good defensively. And I think Alex has got a stat on that, which will tell you. So, there's not much to say about it. It seemed just a very flat. The occasion itself was great. There was the Anzac Day stuff beforehand. Really good turnout by the Phoenix fans. One of the best I've seen this season. I know the Queensland Phoenix fans only get one game a season up there, so it's a shame for them. It was that one, but really good. 6,000 attendance in total in that stadium. That's nothing. It probably looks a bit worse on the cameras because all the cameras look at the empty side. They've only got one half of the side there, but still, 6,000 doesn't touch the sides. We had fun. Even though we'd lost, I guess it doesn't matter too much. You can have a bit of fun if the season's over, but it was disappointing on the pitch. And I don't know why we played that way when we could have either tried some young players or just thrown it forward. Luke Brooks-Smith was brilliant when he came on. I thought, just really good to watch. And you think, why can't more people like that? Corbin Piper, again, effective, so much more effective than other players, a lot better than him. And then players who were just disappointing going for the motion. Rufer, who got taken off. I've never seen Rufer get taken off, except when he's injured or sent off. I think he's over it, I would say, possibly. Hopefully that doesn't carry through to next season. And everyone else just did what we've done all season, which is defend reasonably well. Eventually they get shot and not really go forward at all. So, yeah, does it matter? Because we're out of, we're consigned to Darwin anyway, but no entertainment, and it makes you wonder if anyone's going to bother to come on Friday for the last game of the season.
Yeah, our attack kind of just laboured the entire game until Brooks-Smith and Walker came on. They kind of injected a bit of needed energy, which is a bit disappointing that we're relying on two 16, 17-year-olds, or Walker might be 18, but anyway, two teenagers to kind of give us that spark. I think our team, they're experienced enough that they know how to do that, but I guess they just don't have the drive anymore, and I probably wouldn't either if we've had as bad a season as we had. Our defence, I think we defended moderately well. Like, they didn't have too many entries into our box. Most of their shots were just that most of the time they were just resigned to long shots. Shame is that they're pretty good at long shots. So they scored one and they hit the post a couple of times, and Oluwayemi was forced into a couple of pretty good saves. He had a pretty good game, Oluwayemi. Better than we've seen before. But, at the end of the day, we just didn't show anything going forward pretty much until, as I said before, those subs came on, and that's not really good enough.
I mean, there were some good moments. Like Costa had a few chances, or at least one that was really close to going into the top corner. Shiger had a surprising chance. I don't want to say surprising. It was in like the 4th minute or something like that. He had this really, really...
Where's that bargaining sign, Holly?
I know. It's in my bedroom. Sorry about that. Otherwise I'd bring it. But yeah, I think that the poor condition of the pitch favours Brisbane because they've been playing on that pitch all season. So I feel like they are in a position to take better advantage of that. I don't think it makes it that much of an excuse. I think we've all played on crappy pitches before. If you play grassroots football in New Zealand, you play on crappy pitches. Their striker, Abu Bakar, said that he grew up in Africa and the pitches are shit there, and so he was used to it. So I think Brisbane was perhaps favoured on that, but I mean, it's not an excuse. It was just something that made it a little bit harder for us. Disappointing showing, really, apart from LBS and Walker coming on. Costa still tries. I feel like Costa still tries all the time. Like he never gives up. But Piper, I think, did well, aside from Oluwayemi. Corbyn's just signed today, or it was announced today that he's signed for another 2 seasons, which I think is awesome. I know we've talked about him quite a bit on the pod recently. And, Danny, I know you feel like he's someone who doesn't have the skill that necessarily would be playing that much if we do improve next season. However, he has been a revelation. He is capable of playing anywhere you put him, and he puts in a lot of work. So that's good to see. But yeah, otherwise, I think it was just frustrating.
I think the pitch thing is interesting. I sort of wondered whether Chiefy had seen the pitch and thought, okay, if we try to play short, small ball, moving at the pitch, high possession, we're just going to lose it with bobbles and miscontrols or whatever. So let's try and take it a bit more back to basics. Keep them outside the box, and then we'll try and play sort of not so much long balls, but more direct up front to Costa and Ishiga running on. Maybe that was his thinking behind the sitting back rather than the going forward that we have done in the past few games. It certainly didn't work, and yes, there were bobbles and stuff, but Brisbane had a lot of possession. And it just gave them that more many chances. And, our chances, the chances that we had were actually good. We probably had as many good chances as they did. So, maybe if Ishiga had put that one in the first half and maybe Walker had put that one that Brooks Smith put through that just spectacular pass through to me. If he'd have scored that and we were 2-1 up, we'd be saying, yeah, great, cheeky ball works again. But it didn't. And when it does go wrong, it just looks really bad, and there's no entertaining for the crowd, which is disappointing. Yeah, the pitch is, as I say, it's a bit of a surfy, and I think footballers and football fans maybe here in Australasia watching the A-League, we're very spoilt because we get really good pitches, or they look really good generally all the time, but this is not the case in most parts of the world, certainly not in Europe, where pitches are often terrible because it's played in winter. And I think many players from the A-League who go over to Europe and end up playing outside the Premier League, who can replace their pitch every week if they want to. We're talking down in sort of lower Championship, League One, League Two, probably the Scandinavian leagues, will really struggle because that's the sort of stuff they have to play on all the time. That didn't look like a particularly bad pitch for me, and I've grown up watching lower league football in the UK in the middle of winter. Didn't look that bad. I've seen football played on that all the time. So if you want to be a professional footballer and go overseas, you're probably going to have to learn how to play on that. But yeah, it can be an issue. We know Marco Rojas came back to Australia because he got sick of the pitches in Denmark because he was playing on pitches like that, and his sort of game doesn't work on pitches like that very well, which is why he came back to Australia to play on nice green flat ones where he can dribble and run and it doesn't bobble. So yeah, it's not an excuse. Maybe it was a reason why we did the tactics we did, but you would have thought pretty quickly we'd have realised that those tactics weren't working, and let's just push forward, use the energy of people like Brooksmith and Piper, and just push forward. Because Brisbane aren't that good. If we'd have put more pressure on them, probably would have scored.
Yeah, I think lots of these players have grown up playing on impeccable pitches too, playing grassroots. I played socials for quite a long time, and the pitches were horrible quality then. But then we had an invincible season. We went unbeaten, only one draw, the rest were wins, and then we were kind of promoted to one of the top competitive grades. And then it was like a very steep jump in terms of quality of the pitches. It was either AstroTurf, which is quite a lot, quite common, or pretty good grass pitches. So I think lots of players kind of aren't used to playing on those pitches, especially if they've grown up in New Zealand. First clean sheet for Roar in over a year. Go them.
Well, we should say it was a terrible pitch, and Brisbane Roar should be embarrassed that they're playing that. It just shows how unsuitable Suncorp is for them at the moment. I'm not sure it was ever suitable. I mean, even at their best during Postecoglou's Barcelona era, they were probably getting 16,000 and it holds 55. So even then it was fairly empty. And the pitch has always been an issue for years and years. It just floods and it rains a lot up there. So unfortunately, I don't think there's any money or governmental will to do anything about it up there, even with the Olympics. There's been nothing put in there for soccer in Brisbane at all. So I'm not sure if anything's going to change. And that's sad for Brisbane, I guess.
There's only one team in the league that has enough to do anything about stadium issues.
Yeah, there is. I think it's been really tough for football in Queensland in that there really isn't anywhere that's a home of football. There have been very extensive campaigns by some people with a lot of energy trying to get funding to massively upgrade Perry Park. I've been to Perry Park. It's a good location. It would make sense to upgrade that to make that a bigger stadium because at the moment it is quite small. The government with all this money for, putting in for the Olympics just wasn't interested at the end of the day. Queensland has the highest participation rate of football out of any of the states. Like it is way above. It's really frustrating because Perry Park makes sense. Like they don't have to do it amazingly. They're not rebuilding a new stadium. They just need to fix up the pitch and put in stands. And I'm guessing they would have to upgrade some of the facilities as well. But there just doesn't seem to be any funding for that. And I really feel for Brisbane on that count because where do you go? Like the women can play at Perry Park and they get decent crowds for Perry Park there. Brisbane, they're stuck at Suncorp for their men. Or what they did for the last few years, prior to that, they were playing at KO Stadium, which is in Redcliffe, which is much further away, a much more suited stadium. I've been there too. That's definitely just the kind of size, just the size you want. Too far away. The public transport was crap. So I just, I know we complain about the problem of having Sky Stadium. At least we have a nice pitch to play at, whereas Roar, I do really feel sorry for them because the only stadium that's a decent size has horrendous pitch. So,
and it's a bit more than a decent size.
It is too big to watch football at if it's full, but it's just never full. And it's never going to be for Roar. Even if they get good, they're never going to fill it or get close to it. And you can say the same again with Phoenix and Sky Stadium as well, but we do occasionally fill it every now and then. But at least the location's great because it's centre of the city, and at least the pitch is good. Whereas Suncorp's location's good, it's too big, pitch is crap. So it really doesn't suit them at all.
If you happen to live in Queensland and you watch this podcast, please write to your local MP or whoever local council and tell them that they need to do something about Perry Park or just something, because there's always funding for other sports, but never funding for football, and it's even worse in Queensland than it is here in New South Wales. So what else do we want to talk about in terms of this game? I don't feel like there's that much to talk about beyond this. We could talk about their next game, which is against Perth.
Well, Chief is staying.
Oh yeah, Chief is staying. Yes. Thoughts?
I think it was the right decision, probably. A decision that I saw and I thought, yeah, that's probably the right decision. but I didn't say yes with any great enthusiasm. I wasn't really excited. Oh, brilliant, Chief, you're staying. But I think based on the number of things that went wrong this season and how many of them were out of his control, which is basically player retention, which is not really under his control. They moved on for bigger money, or we had to sell them because that's a business model. And just the injuries have just been brutal. I think they've been the biggest thing in terms of how bad the season is. Now he takes some responsibility because some of the tactical stuff has not been great, I would argue, and possibly some of the recruitment, which he would have a fair hand in, has also maybe not been great. But I don't think it's probably too fair to judge him purely on this season. I think you look at last season, look at this season, go, okay, well, he's pretty much a pass mark. Probably fair to give him another one, unless we'd had someone else waiting in the wings that we know is going to be better. And I don't think that's the case. I don't think there's anyone that we're pretty sure will step into that role and do it better. I'm hoping that the Wellingtons who made the decision have made a decision based on stuff that we can't see as well. We can see, how the team plays. We can see the basics of who's left and who's stayed, but we don't know how he's dealing with that behind the scenes. And I think that's probably the most important thing. He's got a really young squad. They're having a really tough season. A lot of them are playing out of position. It'd be very easy for them to get demoralised and, really turn themselves off. I'm hoping he's dealing with that squad and dealing with that man management well, and I'm presuming he is, because that's why the Wellingtons have extended his contract. Managing, I guess, to be a good manager, you've got to be a good manager in good times and bad times. And I would imagine, well, I know for a fact from personal experience, you learn more about yourself as a manager or a leader in poorer times and challenging times. And, I know certainly in my professional career, my bosses have been probably happier with me when I've been going through tough times, because that's when you have to think, when it's not all going well for you, you have to actually really work at it and improve. So I'm assuming that's what Chief has done behind the scenes, which is why they've given him an extension. Otherwise, I imagine they wouldn't. So I guess he's got a year now another year to prove himself that he's worthwhile being an A-League coach. It's going to be tough because I think there's a lot of fans are probably in two minds. I'm probably vaguely one myself, even though I do like him. I think he comes very well, and obviously he did really well last season. So right decision, but yeah, not a particularly exciting decision, I don't think.
I think the frustration was that, this inability, it seems, to have changed tactics when things weren't working. And I think that's the frustration for a lot of fans coming through this season, this seeming inability to be okay, we need to do things differently, because you could talk about, we had these injuries, we had sickness, we had this, we had that, but you have to play with what you've got, and he's not done a very good job of that. I still can see why they've re-signed Chiefy. I really like Chiefy as a person. I think he has a lot to give, and it sounds like a lot of it did come down to goodwill from last season, but that took way too long to make any kind of change, it felt like. So I am a little bit sceptical, but then again, apparently Sydney FC have just re-signed Uffy for 2 years or something like that. So it's possible that there's not really a lot else on offer as well. It's also a big step to replace a coach. You often have to replace their assistant coaches and things like that. And it seems like a number of coaches that haven't performed particularly well this season have been re-signed by clubs in the league.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is who would replace him if we got rid of him. People go, the Chiefy hate club. They go, our results this season haven't been up to par, which they haven't. And then they just point fingers at the manager and they go, he needs to go. But I think if you look at who would replace him, there's not that many options. Des Buckingham is kind of the one that's been talked about the most. But would he really be willing to come to Wellington? Probably not. He probably wants to build his career bigger and better things. I think part of the frustration around it has been how well we did last season, which obviously was amazing. But I think it's kind of shaped a lot of our fans and a lot of our new fans that we got from last season into expecting immediate success, like happened last season. It's expecting to finish in the top 3 pretty much every season, which, if we're being realistic, it's not going to happen sustainably. Maybe we'll get one good season every once in a while under the current ownership, with the current money pouring into the squad, but I just don't think it's something that we can sustain in the long term without more funds. But I think Chiefy is a good coach, and the season has gone wrong for quite a few reasons, which we'll talk about in our season review. And I would expect us to do better next season.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Central Coast, they did better than us last season. They won the double, and yet they've done just as badly as us this season. I don't think anyone's calling for Edmondson's head as a coach, because I think they recognise, especially with clubs our size and the way the league is structured with salary caps and just the nature of the league, it's very hard to keep that success going year on year. And if you're a team with less resources, as we have, and Central Coast have, it's very easy to get knocked off your path. Basically, everything has to go well. Everything has to fall in line for you to have a really successful season, as we did last year. Everything just fell into line. Other teams weren't as good, or young players came through quicker than we thought they would. Didn't have many injuries, etc., etc. But also, when everything needs to fall in line to have a good season, when things don't fall in line, it's quite easy to have a bad season. We don't have that resilience. We don't have that depth that a team like Sydney or Western Sydney or teams with bigger resources would have. They just have more depth there. When things go wrong, and they can bounce back a bit. I expect us to have a better season next season. How good, I don't really know, because we've got a lot of unknowns in terms of young players who have been through. Some of them have played a lot this season, but maybe not in their right position and in a losing team. And other young players who might well come through next season. Hopefully they will and sort of really step up. I mean, Luke Brooks-Smith just looks to have so much potential. I mean, his ceiling just looks enormous. Whether that will ever happen, we don't know, because he's only 16. He may well have a very quiet season, or who knows. But fingers crossed that will happen. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how they recruit next year and what they aim for. We've actually got quite a lot of people still signed up already, so we haven't got a huge amount of space there. And that's even with, as we all assume, Wharton and Sutton are going as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what they prioritise when they look at re-signing players.
All right, so Perth is at home on Friday, so it's the last batch of the season for us at Sky Stadium at 7:30 p.m. I would like to think we can beat Perth, but I would like to think that we could beat Brisbane as well. I don't know whether Suts and Wharton are just going to put their feet up. They've put their feet up already for a little while. I don't know. At least Wharton has. Thoughts?
Yeah, I would say we've been hot and cold in recent weeks, but I think it's been more like lukewarm and cold. So last game was cold performance, bad performance. So I expect us to drop. A slightly improved performance, lukewarm, you could say. Perth, it's a long way for them to travel. And I think probably a lukewarm performance will be good enough to beat Perth, hopefully, with how well they've done this season. Not very well. So yeah, hopefully we can end the season on a high, or not end the season, because we've got to go to Darwin. Fuck's sake.
Look, it could go either way. I'd be very surprised if we don't play better. I can't imagine anyone was particularly happy with that performance, and I think Chief would have seen it and gone, okay, that sitting back just doesn't work for us anymore. There's nothing riding on the game apart from, entertainment. His contract's there. There's other players. I think he'll want to go out, on a high, Sutton and Woods, and do something. So, if I was him, I would be definitely pushing forward and trying to play a bit more like we did in the previous games against Western Sydney and Adelaide, and just pushing forward and trying to score some goals. There's nothing really to lose to do that. If we end up with another boring 0-0 or a 1-0 to Perth, it's going to leave a sour taste in the mouth. If we can come out with a bit of entertainment and a couple of good goals, then that would be nice. And I'm not even thinking about that one.
Thanks for joining us. We'll be back to chat about this game, and we'll have season reviews coming up at some stage. Thank you. Ngā te wā.